we doing? Let's get rid of that. Thank you, Ion. That's good to go. We are live on, come on, iPad scroll properly. We're live on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, X, Instagram. Comments are on. Hi, Ashley. Thank you for joining us on Instagram. I think we are good. I think we're good to go. Welcome, everybody. March 19th, 2025. I'm trying the new Monday, Wednesday, Friday routine. Felt pretty good yesterday on Tuesday, as I'm doing a bunch of other work and closings and do content. The Grow was out yesterday. It was released at 5 a.m. Tuesday mornings. Thank you, Echo Lux Developments, for joining us on Instagram. Good to see you there. Yeah, so anyways, here we are, March 19, 2025, episode 339. Welcome to Mornings with Scott, the best damn business show for medium and small businesses on the planet. Anything happened yesterday? We had a partial ceasefire negotiation in Ukraine. Trump and Putin talked for a couple of hours, and they came away with a ceasefire agreement on energy infrastructure, mutual. Ukraine wouldn't blow up Russia's, and Russia wouldn't blow up Ukraine's. Wall Street Journal reports this morning that Ukraine and Russia accuse each other of breaking a ceasefire agreement. That was in an article written last night. So the agreement was yesterday. The article last night, according to Wall Street Journal, is that's already toast, or at least they're accusing each other of having broken that ceasefire agreement. What else happened yesterday? Astronauts got home after being stranded 9 months, which is 3 months beyond the health safety guidelines for astronauts for hanging out in space. You get a loss of 1% of bone density per month in a zero gravity situation. Anyways, thank you, Elon. Got the astronauts home. That was kind of cool yesterday. JFK files were released last night. Never a dull moment in this administration. Do you think there's going to be anything in the JFK files? I don't understand these people that think that the CIA, if in fact they're the ones that killed the president in combination with the mafia or not, but if you think that, which is, I might be with you, but if you think that, do you think someone at the Central Intelligence Agency took out a letterhead and wrote down memo to file, we whacked the president today, and then signed off? Do you think that's what happened? Do you think that's going to be in the JFK files? So nothing's come out of that so far. Surprising markets. Markets look pretty green today, at least so far. It is or at least when I was preparing these notes, I don't know if my head is well centered in this thing or what is going on. I'm in Calgary today. Sound is good from Instagram. Thank you for that, Ashley. The markets today are green, and it's a Fed day. It's a Fed day. So I don't know if they've released this. I prepared my notes about an hour ago, but what we're expecting from the Fed is nothing. It's just going to be a total hold interest rates and wait and see approach to everything. So let's see where that goes. I'm expecting a green day in the markets today, but nothing terribly exciting. Bloomberg reports. Now, I haven't done any research on this story yet. This was just sort of half an hour before I was logging in. I found this and wanted to throw it in I think it's interesting, and I think we need to research more. And if you listening to this know more about this story, I'd love you to throw that out to the comments. Reach out to me. I know I have some AI engineering type listeners. It would be good to know. But Bloomberg reports that Canadian telecommunications giant Telus and U.S. artificial intelligence tech heavyweight NVIDIA, so that's the chip makers, have announced a plan to build what they call a sovereign AI factory in eastern Quebec. The companies say they will provide Canadian businesses and researchers with the supercomputers and software they need to train AI while keeping the data within the country's borders. I wonder what the relevance of this is. I don't know Well, anyways, let me finish this and I'll give you a couple of questions I have. Telus plans to deploy NVIDIA's latest generation AI semiconductors at its data center in Rimouski, Quebec, which is in the middle of nowhere, by this summer, with plans to expand its Kamloops, BC facility once the initial capacity is exhausted. The Vancouver-based firm, that would be Telus, says this to be the first North American service provider to become an official NVIDIA cloud partner, which is also interesting. The Rimouski site, that's in the middle of nowhere in Quebec, is to be powered by 99% Hydro-Quebec electricity. That will be really cheap for them. That's the trick to these data centers. Telus says the Quebec facility is 250 kilometers from a major urban center and is highly secure and a good option for customers seeking a core or disaster recovery site. Very interesting. Very interesting. So I'm not sovereign AI factory. So I guess I don't really know what this means, and I want to do a deep dive into it. I feel my gut tells me this is something important and interesting and cool. So we're going to learn more about this. As I said, I just found this Bloomberg report as I was finalizing my notes for this morning. I don't know that this is just a reaction to tariffs and a reaction to nationalism and a remove from globalism. I think it's way more than that, because this would have taken months and months or years of planning to get this done. So it predates all of that for sure. So let me know what you think if you have any thoughts. Report on business in the Globe and Mail, and again for my U.S. audience, that is in effect the Canadian Wall Street Journal. Reports that Switzerland's Glencore, so this is the behemoth, massive global international trading house for commodities, is interested in acquiring the teetering Canadian EV battery recycling company Li-Cycle Holdings Corp. Glencore, March 14, disclosed that it had approached Li-Cycle, I guess Li, could be Lie, Cycle, to discuss the possible deal. It's a public company, this Li-Cycle, by the way. Louis Diaz, Vice President Corporate Affairs with Li-Cycle, in an email to the Globe Mail, said the company had set up a board committee to review the Glencore letter. So you're a public company, you're in bankruptcy, or at least you're insolvent. I don't know if they're technically in bankruptcy. I didn't look that up, but they're in serious trouble. And they've got their major investor coming to them to work out a deal. And his press release to give comfort to the stakeholders is that they've set up a committee. That'll help. That'll help, right? Glencore is one of Li-Cycle's biggest debt holders, and its financings have helped keep the company afloat. Glencore has invested $275 million into Li-Cycle since 2022. The amount of money that I have seen in the last couple of weeks, it's not that the deals happened in the last couple of weeks, but I've been paying attention and researching in the last couple of weeks through my firm because of a deal we are on. The amount of money that goes into failed recycling projects blows my mind. And they just go bust over and over. I could do a story about this every single day. I've yet to find one that works. Ours is going to work. I'll tell you why, and we'll continue on that. But ours is going to work. Toronto-based Li-Cycle's future has been in doubt after it paused construction in 23 on its. So it's just been sitting idle since 23 on its flagship recycling project in Rochester, New York, because of spiraling costs. The U.S. Department of Energy agreed to advance Li-Cycle U.S. $475 million last year to help it finish construction. At one point, Li-Cycle had pegged the total capital cost of the project to be U.S. $960 million. So $1 billion project, and they don't have the money, and they don't have the cost control. Obviously, they're poorly run. Maybe they set up a committee for that. I don't know. Even though the financing package closed, the company has not been able to draw on the loan because it hasn't met certain conditions. Lately, amid mounting quarterly losses, that's what happens when you just idle your construction project for a couple of years. Doubts have risen about Li-Cycle's ability to service its debt and running low on cash. Mr. Lucky in the Friday letter said it was imperative that Li-Cycle take immediate steps to conserve the cash and prevent a worsening of its already strained liquidity, including canceling all outstanding warrants. This Mr. Lucky seems like a pretty sharp tool. Outstanding warrants. I don't know what stock warrants. Do you know what a warrant is? The warrant is it's like an option in a sense. Somebody has the right to buy into the stock. Who would exercise buy the stock of a company? Who would exercise their warrants into this situation? Um, Um, yes, yes. What you do want to do, I do, and this is important for us business owners who are experiencing some trouble, is you do want to conserve cash. When faced with uncertainty, you want to focus on your priorities, conserve your cash. We're going to talk about that more shortly. The possible acquisition of the company by Glencore may end up being a little more than a rounding error. They're huge compared to its previous multi-billion-dollar acquisitions in Canada. The Swiss miner and commodities trading giant acquired 77% of the coal operations of Teck Resources Limited in 2024 for about US 6.9 billion. So Teck Resources is about half of my hometown works in those coal mines and that were acquired by Glencore. And yeah, so I've got the inside scoop and a lot of that from a laborer's perspective. Anyways, after approving the transaction, then industry minister, this has nothing to do with the story, but I found it interesting that Francois Philippe Champagne said he would only henceforth approve acquisitions of large scale Canadian critical mining companies under the most exceptional circumstances. But Glencore doesn't think that this a Lee Cycles deal is going to impact that because it's such a small deal. So, a couple of things. Let's talk about recycling. I said I just keep finding deals in recycling of whatever. Hi, Amandeep. Thank you for joining us on Instagram. I always have to look at a different screen to say thank you to the Instagram people for listening. So I keep finding these large scale recycling projects, plastics, which is the business that we have invested in, batteries, biomass, whatever it is, and they spend a bunch of money and they raise a bunch of money, and it seems to be all from strategic investors like a Glencore. Strategic means it's not just a financial play; that in fact the strategic investor is looking for something that fits already synergistically with their core business. 1+1 = 3, unlike a financial investor who's just simply looking for a financial return. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying it's a different market. So these recycling plants seem to get a bunch of strategic investors like this one, and then they don't work. They don't work. For recycling programs to work, the recycling has to be profitable. Has to be profitable. Has to have excellent management. It has to have no government support in your business plan. I'm not saying government support isn't welcome. It should be welcomed, and it should be provided by whatever government in whatever jurisdiction you're in for whatever it is you're trying to recycle. But if you're building a business plan based for anything, based on ongoing and sustained government support, you're going to be in trouble because governments change. It's just not a realistic business plan that you can count on or should be investing in. And so that's what has to happen. And I was in an all-day planning session with our company, Earth Project, yesterday. And it started off, and I was asked if I want the scientists to explain to me why our technologies and science is better than everybody else's. I said, no, I don't want to see that because I know for a fact nobody else's works. And I know for a fact that ours does work. Well, how do I know nobody else's work without doing any research? Because we have 350 million tons of wasted plastic every year going into oceans, going into landfills globally, going into oceans and landfills. I had drinks with last night with somebody who's a representative of Philippines Business Council, talking about their problems in the Philippines with exactly that issue. If somebody had a solution that was economically viable and made profit without government support, we wouldn't have this problem. Somebody would be out, capitalism would take over, and we would solve this problem. So we don't have that. I know that for a fact. Earth Project has that. Our company that we've invested in has that solution, which is why I am excited about that. Another point about this article, and what was this guy's name? Francois Philippe Champagne. Why no foreign investment in large scale Canadian critical minerals? Like what is the thought behind that? That just seems weak minded and lazy to me. It's a lot like Trump and Biden before him saying that Nippon Steel can't buy U.S. steel. We don't want foreign ownership of this. Why? Why? It seems the entire point of a comfort of a country's regulatory tax and other regimes is to attract foreign investment. That's how you get more wealthy as a nation. And yet we say we don't want to attract foreign investment in these large projects. It's just so stupid. Government, you set the rules, make them clear, make them easy. Environmental rules, labor rules, royalties on the resources, the amount of value add that you have to have in Canada, whatever the rules are, you set the rules and then let the foreign investment come. Has the world changed? Has this little town that I live in, I'm not here right now, I'm in Calgary, but has the world changed for the little town that I'm in for tech resources now that they're owned by Glencore? Of course not. There's going to be little things that are different. There's going to be changes in executive management, but you're mining the exact same resources. You're selling it more or less to the same people. You're doing it with the same laborers. You're operating under the same environmental laws. Invite foreign investment. I don't understand that. Report on Business reports that Canada's beer industry will be hit with a $300 billion increase to the annual cost of cans if the U.S. President Donald Trump refuses to back down from the 25% tariffs he slapped on Canadian and aluminum last week. Aluminum beer cans are currently subject to double tariffs with the United States. Later in the article, it says that Canada produces the aluminum. It ships it to America, so there's a 25% tariff. Americans take that aluminum, which is unprocessed, and they turn it into beer cans, lids, and whatever, and then they ship it back to Canada, triggering another 25% tariff. And the Canadian beer companies buy that. That's basically the double tariffing idea. For Canadian breweries, the tariffs by both governments mean that the cost of doing business will surge, owing to the number of border crossings their cans make before hitting the store shelves. Beer can president, Beer Canada, not beer can. I don't want to be a beer can president, but Beer Canada president, maybe that's uh, more interesting. And this person, CJ Heli, says tariffs will cost this industry an additional $330 million a year. This is a universal concern among every brewer in the country right now. Canada used to be primarily a refillable glass market. Remember the stubbies, little glass stubbies? Those were kind of cool. And then you got the tall boys. Those were less cool. And then you went to cans, which suck. Although you can, I was going to say you could crush them on your head, but you could also break the bottles on your head. I don't know, back in the day. Today, 85% of the packaged beer in Canada is sold in cans. So set up manufacturing in Canada. Make it in Canada. Well, I know you can't do that overnight. I know it's a transition, but isn't that the whole point of tariffs, is to avoid the sending it here, sending it back there? Last year, Canada exported more than 10.6 billion worth of unwrought, meaning minimally processed aluminum to the US, which was Canada's top export for the product by a long shot. And then, as I said, the Americans make that into cans and ship it back, and you end up with double tariffs. Many breweries couldn't stockpile. This is Mr. Heli fellow. Couldn't stockpile because of the cans in advance of the tariffs because of cash flow and storage space constraints. And the price of aluminum has already dropped 80% since January. And Miss Bethune of Steam Whistle Brewery, which is, I believe, out of Toronto and specializes in making beer out of yummy Toronto city water. I don't know that for a fact, but that's what I've always assumed. Is a high-end premium craft beer maker. They have really good beer. Steam Whistle. I'm not a beer drinker. Rarely drink beers, but I do like the Steam Whistle from time to time. We don't want to outprice ourselves on the market during a time when consumers are going to be feeling this all around them, says Steam Whistle. Nonsense. Put a surcharge. She says she can't increase her prices. You can always increase your prices a little. What are we talking here? Like cents? cents on the cost of a beer. This is not like $6 on a six pack. You could even call it, you don't have to raise your price. You could add a surcharge to your price called the Trump surcharge on prices. People would go out of their way and be excited to pay that surcharge of an extra 50 cents or dollar, whatever it turns out to be, um, just to stick a middle finger to the US tariff regime. So there's ways to go about that. Um, Mr. Haley, the Beer Canada president, is hoping the industry will recoup some of his losses and Ottawa returns to what it receives in counter tariffs. In other words, he's hoping the government distributes some of the tariffs they collect back to the industry. Someone was telling me last night over drinks out here in Alberta that they run into clients, businesses every day, particularly in the energy sector, and they have to go bankrupt. She kept saying they have to go bankrupt. They have to go bankrupt because of the uncertainty of the tariffs. No, they don't. Come on. You don't know that. You don't know where this is going to end up. You don't know what the negotiations are going to be. You don't know what the threats are. Is it going to get better? Is it going to get worse? You do not know what's going to happen. Intra-provincial barriers may be brought down. Um, the Canadian dollar may get much weaker or it may get much stronger because of tariffs. There's all sorts of moving parts to this. To do a univariate analysis, look at one variable being tariffs on this and think, we're toast. We got to file bankruptcy. That's a ridiculous thing to do. By the way, for Steam Whistle, this could get much worse. It doesn't have to be better. I'm not saying there's mitigating circumstances that 100% of the time are going to make it better. Maybe it makes it worse. What if the Canadian dollar just drops by whatever? Let's say it goes down to 64 cents. And now, not only are they trying to buy aluminum cans from the US and paying a 25% tariff on those cans, but they're buying those US made cans with a super weak Canadian dollar. That's a triple whammy. What happens if that happens? So you don't know. That's my point. This is a period of uncertainty. No one's walking around, or should be walking around in their business thinking, hey, we're going to go bankrupt. We don't know that. We don't know anything about that. What we do know is it's a period of uncertainty and we should treat it like a crisis. And what do you do as a leader when you're in that situation? You hunker down, you focus on defense first, which is the theme of 2025 of Mornings with Scott. I always tell you that every single day. And so focus on your priorities, conserve your cash, stop wasting money, be bulletproof, on everything, and then look for opportunities to pounce, if we can put it that way, and to leapfrog your competition. That's what you do. That's what you do as a leader in times of uncertainty, and that's where we are right now. LinkedIn post of an article written for some journal. I didn't look up what journal it was, but it was written by Robert Dinozzi, Dinozzi. So as a tribute to Robert, who I know a little bit, I'm not saying we're buds, but we've talked on the phone a few times. Robert, Dinozzi, Dinozzi. And I think he's in New York, Connecticut, something like that. He is Chief Growth Officer for Second Wing Consultants, overseeing brand strategy and value-added relationships with lenders, investors, business intermediaries, and other stakeholders. And prior to that, he spent 15 years in Hollywood as a feature film producer and executive overseeing the creative development and structured finance of film projects at MGM, Paramount, Warner Brothers, Walt Disney, Universal, so on and so forth. So anyways, he's an interesting guy, brings a interesting perspective to the turnaround restructuring world, which is the world that he is in now. So he writes an article, as he calls it, an expose, that says when business owners find themselves buried in debt, especially high-cost products like merchant cash advance, they often turn to debt settlement companies for help. So do you know how merchant cash advance and MCA product works? I'm finding them all the time, particularly out west. A little bit in the east, but it seems to be a good market for these products out west here. And so what happens is you apply your business, let's say you're manufacturing, doesn't matter what business, but let's just, for hypothetically, say you're manufacturing, you've already got a bank that as a first secured charge over your receivables, your inventory, your equipment, and you're kind of running out of money and you're in trouble, but you have regular collections into your bank account. And so you go online to the merchant cash advance people and you say, hey, um, I'd like to borrow some money. And they say, okay, online. It's all virtual, most of this. And they say, okay, submit some information. Mostly what we want is 6 months of historical bank statements. So what they're looking for is the amount of cash that is being deposited into your bank account on average every single day or whatever. And then they will lend you X percent of that cash that's being deposited. And they say, okay, so you qualify for, they come up with a number. You qualify for a $400,000 or a $60,000 loan from us. And the way that they do that behind the scenes, as I said, is they're looking at your deposits, they're applying a formula to that, and that's what spits out. And then what they do is if you accept that money, they send you the cash and they have a daily or weekly sweep directly out of your account. So I'm going to lend you, let's use $100,000, and every day I'm gonna take out of your account $1,167.28 every day. Okay, I made up the numbers. Obviously, I don't even know if those rates work. It's like when you were, if you're an older guy like me and you remember car leasing back in the '90s when leasing was such a huge thing. You'd walk in, you'd want to buy the BMW, whatever. What was those? 318, my first real car, something like that. And you go in and you say, okay, I'd like to lease this. So they go, okay, well, that's $328 a month. And you say, oh, okay, I can afford that. $328 a month. What's the interest rate on that? And the guy would look at you with a blank face. And it didn't even compute for him. He'd say, it's $328 a month. No, I know that. But what's the interest rate? What's the terminal value? What's the AM? Like, how do I figure out where that's a good financing? And the guy was like, I don't even know what you're talking about. This is $328 a month. That would be the conversation. It was all hidden. It was all embedded. And that's what merchant cash advances are like. It's like, I'm going to take $1,167 out of your account every day. Don't worry about the interest rate, any of that. So that's what they do. That's what their business model. And there's nuance. Like everyone's different jurisdictions. Look at, if you need that 60 grand today, like it's not the end of the world. Sometimes, depending on what you're doing with that money, hopefully you don't get into that situation. I meet companies and they've got 60 grand from this one, 110 from that one, 75,000 from this one. Like they've layered three of these advances on, and the interest rates, if you try to figure it out, are astronomical. As I know people that run merchant advance companies, and they're doing compounded 30-40% returns on their money. And now there's a compounding impact to that. There's a leverage impact to that. So it's not that each borrower's paying that amount, but it's very expensive. It's expensive money. And if you're a desperate business owner, you just fall into that trap because you're like, wow, I could afford $1,100 a day coming out of my account. So, anyways, when businesses owners, according to Robert Denozzi, find themselves buried in debt, especially high-cost products like MCAs, they often turn to debt settlement companies. And by the way, his article is about debt settlement companies. It's not about MCAs. My interest is the MCAs. For how, unfortunately, many of these companies are just as predatory as the lenders. Asset-based lenders, ABLs, business debt settlement schemes can accelerate a borrower's financial deterioration, disrupting cash flow, triggering a default, expediting liquidation. This poses a direct risk to secured lenders who rely on predictable cash flow and collateral value to protect their positions. The truth is, most debt relief companies do little to genuinely assist business owners. In fact, their contract is often designed to obscure a predatory business model that prioritizes attracting excessive fees. Yeah, that's a shock. That's a shock. So he goes on to say in this article that you hire this debt relief company at great expense and excessive fees that are all hidden in the contract. And you do that because you've run out of cash and you can't afford to have the $1,100 scoop from your account every day in my hypothetical example. And then what does that debt relief company do? Nothing. Their primary strategy is to stall and not talk to the merchant cash advance companies at all. He says their primary strategy is often to stall creditors by advising business owners to stop making payments. Just stop. Just put a cancel on the pad, the automatic withdrawal from your account, and instead save money for the future for a lump sum settlement. What is sold as a structured plan, in reality, a delay tactic designed to maximize their earnings at the business owner's expense. This stall and save tactic is not only ineffective, but incredibly dangerous when dealing with FCA lenders. Stalling invariably triggers aggressive collection tactics, very true, including lawsuits, frozen bank accounts, only if you lose, and even the interception of receivables. Yeah, again, only if you lose, putting businesses in an even worse situation than before or forcing them to shut down altogether. Even more reckless are firms that advise businesses to default on their contractual payment obligations, put that stop payment on the pad. And that not only worsens the immediate financial consequences, but it could also lead to civil tort, fraud claims. Worse still, reckless strategies don't just harm the borrower, they destabilize the entire lending ecosystems. Is that true? Yeah. Have you ever tried to call a merchant cash advance company, a lender, and negotiate a deferral or a haircut or some other restructuring plan because the business is running out of cash? You ever tried to do that? I have. I have. Do you know how it goes? Doesn't go well. It doesn't go well. Not once do they ever say, yeah, cool, send me a cash flow. Let's work through a restructuring plan. That doesn't happen. I'm not saying you shouldn't try. You do have to try. It's the right thing to do. It's the honorable thing to do. But in the end, what happens is you are met with a choice. A choice is, do I let them suck every last cash out of the company so I miss payroll and they have effectively prioritized themselves in the security pecking order? In other words, I'm not paying off my bank. I'm paying off the junior secured or unsecured creditor, being the merchant cash advance people, because they're just getting to the cash first because they're quicker because they have it automated, right? And so you're faced with that predicament, which I would suggest to you might be unethical if you make that decision, versus putting a stop payment to them taking the cash out of your account, which Robert here is suggesting could also be unethical in that situation. I'll tell you right now, I have advised clients to put stop payments and to save up a bunch of capital for a one-time negotiation for a lump sum payment. I think it depends on your situation. And never should you just stop paying a lender, even a merchant cash advances, evil as you might think they are. They're not all evil. Some of them are great. But if you think they're bad people, you still should not do that. You signed a contract, you took their money. But at the end of the day, if they're not willing to have a discussion with you and you can't afford to pay them anymore, you have to do something. And one thing you need to do is get their attention. This is real. Get their attention, right? That's the first rule of persuasion. I teach in some of my courses, and we'll talk about it on the show more at length, I'm sure, the ATMOG methodology for persuasion and negotiation. Well, the A in ATMOG is attention. If they're not paying attention to you, you can't negotiate anything. You know what gets people's attention? Put a stop payment. Put a stop payment on the payment stream, and at least somebody will call you up and stop ignoring you. Back to Robert's article, he says, Rise Alliance, a small business restructuring firm based in New York City, has seen firsthand how these stall and save tactics leave business owners worse off. Of course, you're worse off. You're in trouble. If you could afford to pay them, the merchant cash advance people, that would be great. If you can't afford, you put a stop payment to it, what happens? Well, it starts compounding, and the situation just gets worse and worse and worse at these high interest rates really quickly. But at the end of the day, if you have to restructure and you have to respect secured creditors, employee claims, priority claims versus unsecured claims, which is what an MCA or junior secured claims, which is an MCA probably is, You have to do what you have to do. So it just gets worse and worse and worse. He says, quote, I would never advise a business to simply stop paying MCA lenders as a recipe for disasters. Owners contact us all the time after getting caught up with debt relief outfits. Sometimes we can help. But if MCAs have swept their operating accounts and intercepted their receivables, it's usually too late. He says a legitimate restructuring plan will always engage with MCA lenders immediately. They're just going to tell you to piss off. That's what's going to happen. Two, negotiate altered repayment terms. They're just going to tell you to get lost. That's what's going to happen. And not everybody. You should absolutely take this advice and try to do it. I'm just telling you, 9 times out of 10, it's not going to work, and you have to do something more drastic to get their attention. Provide short-term cash flow relief, allowing the business to stabilize and avoid further distress, and position the business for more responsible financing. The bottom line is the advice here is don't get into this position. That's basically the advice from this restructuring firm. That's it for today. I'm a little bit over time. I thank you so much for joining us. Any comments or questions I should respond to? Does it look like anything? What is the theme, folks? What is the theme of 2025? Defense wins championships. That's what the theme is. That's what I want you all to focus on in your business. Your accounting should be bulletproof. Your reporting should be bulletproof. You should get in front of issues, dot your I's, cross your T's. That's the theme for 2025. We will see you Friday. Thank you for listening.